Cornelia.
Thank you, Annika. A quick question on Dublin III. The Austrian authorities are planning to take a case against the European Commission because they are saying that the Dublin III regulation is unfair because 10 member states are taking 90% of the asylum cases. So they are challenging the Dublin III regulation, referring to Article 80 in the Lisbon Treaty, which deals with solidarity, and they give you 2 months' time in order to bring up a new proposal. Can you give us any comment on this? Because otherwise they say they will bring it to the European Court of Justice. Thank you.
Let me say to that now is definitely not the time to take each other to court. Now is the time to show solidarity and to implement the ambitious European migration agenda set out by the Commission, and also to lend support to those member states that, as you're saying, are facing the biggest influx of migrants. Let me remind you that this is a crisis where we're talking, as President Juncker has said many times, we're talking about real people, people like you and I, people who just happen not to be like you and I because they haven't been born in the richest parts of the world. But when it comes to Dublin, the Commission undertakes, as you know, its evaluation of the Dublin system in 2016, and it will be able to draw on the expertise and experience from the relocation and resettlement mechanism. A full functioning of EU rules can only work if member states show solidarity and take up responsibility by complying with all the rules. And in the meantime, up until that evaluation, member states have the responsibility to fully comply with the EU rules. This includes the entire common European asylum system, including the Dublin regulation. Any other questions on migration? Adam.
Hi, Adam Fleming from the BBC. Just so we can get you on record, does the Commission have a view about the decision by the government in Slovakia that it will not accept Muslim refugees as part of the relocation programme?
I'm aware of the comment. As you know, we don't comment on comments, but let me remind you that in principle we act here all in the letter and the spirit of the treaty, which prevents any kind of discrimination, any form of discrimination. Anything else on the same subject? Yeah, Christian? No? Have we exhausted migration for today? Georgi?
I'd be curious to hear a comment from you regarding the figures that have become available. There were 21,000 immigrants arriving in Greece only last week, while the EU plan for relocation of migrants provides for relocating 16,000 migrants from Greece to other EU countries. Seems like a very small number, isn't it?
Talking about numbers, I'll ask Christian to come up here, but let me just add that we're very much, and always have been, aware of the urgency of the crisis and of the need for a full and large European response. But I'll get Christian to give you details on figures and numbers.
Well, when it comes to figures, this July the number of migrants entering at the EU's borders have tripled to more than 100,000 for the first time. From January until June, the EU28 has already received more than 400,000 asylum applications, compared to more than 600,000 for last year in total. This is not a Greek crisis or an Italian crisis or a German crisis or a Hungarian crisis or French or Austrian crisis. This is a global migration crisis and requires bold and joint actions now and in the long term. The European Commission is taking the lead on a coordinated European response, as announced in the European agenda on migration. So let me just mention a few parts that are ongoing right now. On funding, the Commission is treating without delay the requests of emergency assistance by Austria, Hungary and France. next week, on 25th, 26th August, the Commission is organizing a joint meeting in Greece to implement the hotspot approach in Greece, in Piraeus. On Calais, we are in touch with the French authorities, and the Commission, there will soon be a visit, still this month. We are also working to strengthen the coordination on safe countries of origin, and lists of safe countries of origin. A meeting will take place on this on 2nd of September with EASO and member states. On relocation and resettlement, on 3 September, the Commission, together with the European Asylum Support Office, will organize a joint workshop for the member states on relocation and resettlement to ensure immediate and smooth implementation of the two schemes. On 14 September, the third Relocation and Resettlement Forum is taking place to continue the discussions on the technical modalities. On relocation, let me remind you, as soon as the European Parliament votes its opinion in September, the Council will adopt the decision, and we can start implementing the mechanism on the ground. On Frontex and the assets, following Commissioner Avramopoulos' letter to all Ministers of Interior asking for more assets to support Frontex operations in Greece and Hungary, Frontex is following up with Member States to deliver soon. A meeting is planned together with Frontex and the Member States on 9th to 10th September. On smuggling, on 10th September, the Commission is chairing a meeting to enhance interagency cooperation against migrant smuggling together with Frontex, Europol, EASO, Eurojust, EMSA, CIPOL. Let me also reiterate our permanent relocation proposal as announced in the migration agenda. The Commission will present this proposal for a permanent emergency relocation mechanism towards the end of the year. And on return policy, the Commission will swiftly follow up the European Council conclusions on effective return, readmission, and reintegration policies for discussions with Interior Ministers in October. So the European Commission is deeply committed to delivering every aspect of the European agenda on migration. This is not straightforward or easy, but this is not a Commission that chooses the path of least resistance.
One thing that you said that it's not a Greek problem, but it is a Greek problem, especially because due to the dismal situation in Libya, now the migrant flows basically avoid Italy and are directed towards Greece. It is a Greek problem. Doesn't the Commission realize that?
The Commission very much realizes and has realized from the outset that it is a European problem. I think what we are trying to say is that it's not a Greek, it's not a German, it's not a French, it's not a Hungarian or an Austrian problem. It's a problem in the sense that all member states need to own up to the problems, the influxes that are, yes, more accentuated in some countries than in others. But the reason why you need a European response is because you need to see it as a European problem. That is why we came forward with the ambitious strategy in May, and Christian has just outlined some of the details. But I believe it'd be wrong to call it a Greek problem.
And talking about Greece and migration, let me also add at this point that the Commission has now received all the necessary documents for the designation to be completed very soon. So we're talking about the 30 million on financing and the designation of the national authority to manage the funds. So the first disbursement is expected to be transferred very soon.
Okay, anything else on migration we can help you with, or other questions that Christian can help with? No, doesn't seem to be the case. Thank you. Any other topics? Christian.